The arena stretched before Sarah Chen like a crystal cage, its transparent walls rising 50 feet into the air, where thousands of alien spectators watched with hungry eyes and clicking mandibles and telepathic whispers that buzzed through the station's atmosphere. She rolled her shoulders and felt the weight of humanity pressing down on her worn combat suit. Not just her own species, but the 300 colonists who would live or die based on what happened in the next hour. Across the gleaming floor stood something out of nightmares and ancient Earth legends combined into one terrible reality. War Prince Kael'thas of the Draxian High Clans measured 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like oil on water, and muscles that coiled beneath his armored hide like steel cables. His eyes were golden and slit-pupilled, and they tracked her movements with predatory intelligence that made her stomach tighten. Sarah had fought many battles in her 32 years, but none of them had been ritual combat, where the rules were simple and brutal. Fight until one warrior surrenders or dies, and the winner's people take the disputed territory. The Draxians wanted the colony world of New Terra, and they had every right under Galactic Coalition law to challenge for it. And humanity had sent their best fighter. Sarah wondered if their best was good enough. "Begin," the station arbiter announced, in a voice that translated through neural implants into every language simultaneously. Kael'thas moved first, and he moved like lightning strikes and avalanches combined into one fluid motion. Sarah barely dodged the first strike, and his clawed hand passed inches from her throat, and she felt the wind of it, and smelled something like copper and smoke. She rolled away, and came up with her combat blade drawn, but the weapon felt like a toothpick against his armored bulk. The crowd roared and chittered and hummed their approval, as Kael'thas pressed his advantage with strikes that could shatter concrete, and speed that shouldn't be possible for something his size. Sarah had studied Draxian combat techniques for months, and she knew they favored direct confrontation and overwhelming force, and viewed tactical retreat as cowardice. So she retreated. She dove behind one of the arena's decorative pillars as Kael'thas's fist cratered the floor where she had been standing, and chunks of crystal rained down like deadly hail. "Fight me, human," Kael'thas growled in thickly accented standard, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Do not scurry like prey." Sarah said nothing and focused on breathing and surviving. She had no illusions about winning through strength or speed, and her only advantages were her mind and her willingness to do whatever it took, and human stubbornness that had carried her species from caves to stars. Kael'thas charged again, and this time Sarah waited until the last possible second before sliding under his guard and slashing at his ankle joint. Her blade screeched against his scales and barely left a scratch. His backhand caught her in the ribs and sent her flying 15 feet, and she hit the arena wall hard enough to see stars. Pain exploded through her chest, and she tasted blood. The crowd's noise intensified, and she could hear the cruel amusement in their alien voices, because everyone knew humans were soft and weak and fragile compared to most species. Sarah forced herself to stand, and spit blood, and keep moving. Kael'thas stalked toward her with confidence that came from 47 victories and 0 defeats, and his golden eyes held something like pity. "You fight with honor," he said as he closed the distance. "I will make your death quick." Sarah's mind raced as she catalogued the arena's features and looked for anything she could use. The pillars were decorative crystal and load-bearing. The floor was smooth, but had stress fractures from previous battles. The walls were unbreakable transparent alloy. She had one chance. Sarah feinted left, and then dove right, as Kael'thas struck, and his fist hammered into the pillar she had been using for cover. The pillar cracked. Sarah spun and kicked the damaged section with every ounce of strength in her legs, and the pillar shattered, and a jagged shard as long as her arm broke free. She grabbed it, despite the sharp edges cutting her palms, and Kael'thas turned toward her with surprise finally showing in those golden eyes. He moved to strike, but Sarah was already moving with desperate speed and clarity that came from knowing this was her only opportunity. She ducked under his guard and drove the crystal shard upward with both hands and all her remaining strength. The makeshift weapon caught him across the face from his left eyebrow down to his. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then blood began to flow, and Kael'thas stumbled backward with one hand pressed to his face, and dark Draxian blood seeping between his clawed fingers. The crowd went absolutely silent. Sarah stood gasping for air, with bloody hands and cracked ribs, and the crystal shards still clutched in her grip. Kael'thas lowered his hand slowly, and Sarah saw what she had done, a deep cut that had destroyed his left eye and carved a path down his face that would scar forever. She expected rage and retaliation and her death. Instead, Kael'thas dropped to one knee. His remaining eyes stared at her with an expression she couldn't read, and then he spoke in his own language, with words that sounded ancient and formal. Sarah's neural translator struggled to keep up with the archaic dialect, but finally rendered the words. By the blood scar given in honorable combat, the Takareth is invoked upon this day and before these witnesses. Kael'thas placed his bloodied hand over his chest and continued. Her blade has claimed me where no other could, and my body has accepted her mark, and my blood recognizes her strength. He looked directly at Sarah with his one remaining eye, and the golden iris seemed to glow. I am hers in battle, and hers in death, and hers in life eternal, until the stars grow cold and the universe ends. The arena erupted into chaos. Aliens were shouting and arguing, and some were leaving their seats. The Arbiter was frantically checking legal databases. Sarah just stood there bleeding and confused and wondering what she had just done. A Draxian official approached with translator devices and explained in clipped tones that Sarah had invoked an ancient warrior custom and that Kael'thas now belonged to her by sacred oath. I don't understand, Sarah said through the pain in her ribs. The official's scales rippled with what might have been disgust or resignation. You have marked a war prince of the high clans in single combat, and his biology has accepted your superiority by allowing the scar. What does that mean? Sarah demanded. It means, human, that he is yours now, the official said coldly. Your bonded warrior, and your sworn guardian, and your property by ancient right. Sarah looked at Kael'thas, who still knelt with blood running down his ruined face. The dispute is settled, the Arbiter announced. By invocation of Takareth, the human colony claims New Terra, and War Prince Kael'thas is released to Captain Chen's custody. Sarah wanted to protest and argue and refuse, but medical teams were already rushing toward them both, and the world was starting to spin from blood loss and shock. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Kael'thas being helped to his feet, while staring at her with his one remaining eye, and an expression that might have been devotion or might have been something she had no name for. She had come to win a world. Instead, she had won a Draxian war prince. Sarah wasn't sure which prize was more dangerous. Sarah woke in a medical bay that smelled like antiseptic and something sweet she couldn't identify, and every breath sent fire through her cracked ribs. Her hands were wrapped in synthetic skin, and the pain was a dull throb, thanks to whatever medications were flowing through her system. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. You should rest, a deep voice said from the shadows. Sarah's hand went to where her weapon should have been, but found only hospital sheets. Kael'thas stepped into the light, and Sarah's breath caught. The left side of his face was sealed with medical gel, but she could still see the scar she had given him. A thick raised line from where his eyebrow had been, down across the empty socket, and continuing to his jaw. His remaining eye watched her carefully. What do you want? Sarah asked, and her voice came out rough. To understand my new purpose, Kael'thas said simply, with surprising gentleness for something his size, and sat down like he was trying not to frighten a wounded animal. Look, I don't know what that ritual was, Sarah said, but I'm not keeping you as property or whatever your people think happened. Kael'thas tilted his head, and his scales rippled with colors she was learning to read as confusion. You misunderstand the Takareth, Captain Chen. Then explain it, Sarah demanded. Among my people, scars do not form easily, Kael'thas began, and touched the sealed wound on his face. Our biology heals most injuries perfectly and leaves no mark, because our bodies are made for war, and warriors who scar are warriors who have been bested. Sarah listened despite herself. I have fought 47 battles before you, he continued. I have been cut and burned and broken, but every wound healed without trace, because my body rejected the damage and rebuilt itself stronger. His golden eye focused on her, with intensity that made her want to look away. But your blade marked me, and my body accepted the scar, and my blood recognized your superiority in that moment of combat. So what? Sarah said. Your biology has some weird hierarchy response? The Takareth is older than the Draxian Empire, Kael'thas said, and his voice carried weight, like he was reciting scripture. It comes from when my ancestors were still tribal, and fought clan wars across our homeworld, and the greatest warriors would sometimes find an opponent who could truly test them, and defeat them, and mark them. He leaned forward, and Sarah fought the urge to pull back. When that happened, the defeated warrior would swear the oath and bind themselves to the victor, because only by staying close to such strength could they grow stronger themselves. That's insane, Sarah said. That is Draxian, Kael'thas corrected, and the Takareth has not been invoked in 300 years because few warriors fight with honor anymore, and fewer still can mark a Draxian in single combat. Sarah's head was spinning from more than just the medications. I don't want a slave. I am not a slave, Kael'thas said, and something like pride entered his voice. A slave serves because they must, and I serve because I have chosen to honor the old ways, and because you earned my loyalty with your blade. I can't just have a 8-foot alien warrior following me around, Sarah protested. You can and you will, Kael'thas said firmly. I am your bonded guardian and your battle partner and your sworn protector, until death takes one of us or both. Sarah wanted to argue, but a Draxian official entered the medical bay with a tablet and bureaucratic efficiency. Captain Chen, the official said without preamble, the dispute over New Terra has been settled in humanity's favor due to the honor debt created by the Takareth invocation. Muttered. War Prince Kael'thas has been formally released from imperial service, and all his titles and properties have been transferred to a trust pending his return. The official continued while scrolling through documents. Return from what? Sarah asked. From his oath service to you, the official said like it should be obvious. The Takareth typically lasts until the bonded warrior proves themselves worthy of independence, or until death. The official looked at Kael'thas with something cold in their eyes. Though I suspect death will come first, given the shame he has brought to his bloodline. Kael'thas said nothing, but his scales darkened. The official left, and Sarah was alone again with her unexpected acquisition. Tell me about yourself, Sarah said finally, because she needed to understand what she was dealing with. Kael'thas settled back in his chair. I am the youngest son of Emperor Thaxvor, and I was trained from hatching to lead our armies and expand our territories. Youngest of how many? Sarah asked. 7 brothers and 3 sisters, Kael'thas said. All of them warriors and conquerors, and none of them have ever known defeat. Until now, Sarah said. Until now, Kael'thas agreed. They will see this as weakness and shame, and some will try to kill me for dishonoring our bloodline. Sarah absorbed this information. And you're okay with that? I am alive, Kael'thas said simply. You could have killed me when you had the advantage, but instead you fought with honor, and gave me an honorable defeat, and invoked an honorable bond. He touched his scar again. This mark is my pride now, because it proves I finally found a warrior worthy of respect. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Her own past was less glorious. She had been a Marine in the Earth Defense Force, and fought in the frontier wars, where humanity pushed into space and met species that didn't want neighbors. she had lost her entire squad in an ambush on Kepler Station. 12 good soldiers died because intelligence was bad and leadership was worse, and Sarah survived only because she had been on point when the plasma grenades went off. She left the military after that and became a mercenary because the pay was better and she could choose her battles and send money to the families of her dead squad. Guilt was expensive. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "You have contracts?" Kael'thas asked. "One," Sarah admitted. "Security work on a mining colony in the Outer Rim, and it pays well, but it's probably going to be boring." "Then we go," Kael'thas said. "You lead and I follow, and together we fulfill your obligations." "Just like that?" Sarah said. "Just like that," Kael'thas confirmed. Over the next 2 days, Sarah tried multiple times to release Kael'thas from his oath. Each time, he refused, argued that she didn't need a bodyguard. He pointed out that her cracked ribs suggested otherwise. She argued that he had better things to do. He said his only purpose was now to serve the Takareth. She argued that people would think he was weak. He said anyone who thought that was welcome to challenge him and learn otherwise. Finally, Sarah gave up. She signed the discharge papers and collected her payment for winning the arena dispute and bought passage on a transport heading to the Outer Rim. Kael'thas followed like a massive scaled shadow. On the transport, other passengers stared and whispered. Humans muttered about keeping pet aliens. Draxians sneered at Kael'thas's dishonor. The insectoid Zen clicked their mandibles in amusement. Sarah ignored them all and focused on reading the briefing documents for her next job. Kael'thas sat beside her in a specially reinforced seat and studied her with his one golden eye. "You are troubled," he observed. "I don't like owing people," Sarah said without looking up, "and I don't like people owing me." "The Takareth is not debt," Kael'thas said. "It is partnership." "Partnerships are supposed to be equal," Sarah argued. "Then make it equal," Kael'thas said. "Train me in your human tactics, and I will train you in Draxian combat arts, and we will both become stronger." Sarah finally looked at him. "You really believe this will work?" "I believe you defeated me when no one else could," Kael'thas said. "I believe there is much I can learn from you, and perhaps much you can learn from me." His scar caught the light and gleamed. "And I believe that scars tell stories, and ours is just beginning." Sarah closed her briefing documents and made a decision. "Fine," she said, "but we do this my way, and if you don't like how I operate, then you can void this oath thing and go home." Kael'thas said immediately. "And stop calling me captain," Sarah added. "We're not in the military anymore." "What should I call you?" Kael'thas asked. "Sarah," she said. "My name is Sarah." Kael'thas nodded slowly. "Then you may call me Kale if you wish." "Kale." Sarah tested the name. "All right, partner. Let's see if this works." The transport jumped to faster than light and carried them both toward whatever came next. 6 months changed everything, and nothing. Sarah and Kale worked contract after contract across the frontier worlds, where civilization was thin and violence was thick, and money flowed to those willing to risk their lives. Their partnership started awkwardly. Kale's instinct was to charge directly at threats with overwhelming force, while Sarah preferred ambush tactics and strategic positioning, and using the environment as a weapon. On their second job together, protecting a merchant convoy, Kale rushed ahead to engage pirates, and Sarah had to save him from a crossfire that would have killed anyone less armored. "You can't just run at every problem," Sarah had shouted over the sound of plasma fire. "And you cannot hide from every fight," Kale had responded while ripping a pirate's weapon in half. They argued constantly, but they also learned. Kale began to understand human tactics, the value of cover, and the importance of controlling sight lines, and how sometimes the best victory was the one where you didn't have to fight. Sarah learned Draxian combat meditation, breathing techniques that slowed her heart rate, and mental exercises that let her think clearly even in chaos. and ways to channel pain into focus. Other mercenaries watched them with mixed reactions. Some called Kale the human's pet lizard in bars and laughed. Kale broke 3 tables and sent 5 mercenaries to medical bays before Sarah convinced him to ignore the insults. "They're trying to get a reaction," Sarah explained, while cleaning blood off her knuckles, because she had also punched someone. "Don't give them what they want." "They dishonor you," Kale growled. "They're idiots," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference." News reached the Draxian Empire about Kale's activities, and his family's response was cold silence. His brothers sent no messages. His father, the Emperor, made no official statement. The High Clans whispered that Kael'thas had shamed them all by serving a human. Kale never spoke about it, but Sarah saw how his scales would darken when other Draxians sneered at him in spaceports. Their 4th contract was on a mining colony called Tartarus 7, where local gangs were extorting the workers. Sarah planned the operation carefully, identify the gang leaders, and cut off their supply lines and force them to negotiate. Kale wanted to simply fight them all. "There are 40 armed gang members," Sarah pointed out. "Even you can't fight 40 at once." "I have fought more," Kale said, "and almost died doing it," Sarah reminded him. "We're doing this smart." They compromised. Sarah would infiltrate the gang's warehouse to gather intelligence, while Kale provided overwatch from a nearby building. It worked perfectly until someone recognized Sarah from a previous job. Surrounded by 20 gang members with weapons and no easy escape, Sarah keyed her comm. "Kale, I need an exit." "On my way," Kale responded. "Negative," Sarah said quickly. "Too many guns, and they'll cut you down before you reach me." "I am coming," Kale insisted. Sarah heard the sound of his heavy footfalls and knew he was already moving. "Kale, stand down, and that's an order." There was a pause. Then Kale said something in his own language that Sarah's translator rendered as an ancient curse, but he stopped moving. Sarah fought her way out with tactics and improvised weapons and 3 cracked knuckles. When she emerged bloody but alive, Kale was waiting. "You should have let me help," he said, and his one eye blazed with frustrated anger. "You would have died," Sarah said flatly. "Better than letting you face danger alone," Kale argued. "The Ta Kerith doesn't mean you throw your life away," Sarah shot back. "I need you alive and functional, not dead because you were stupid." Kale's scales shifted through several colors before settling on something that might have been understanding. "I am supposed to protect you," he said quietly. "And you do," Sarah said, "but protection doesn't always mean charging into gunfire." Their 6th contract was supposed to be simple: escort duty for a diplomat traveling to peace negotiations. Instead, they walked into an ambush. Plasma bolts filled the air, and Sarah's combat instincts took over. Find cover, assess threats, identify escape routes. Kale moved to shield the diplomat and took 3 direct hits to his chest. His armor held, but Sarah saw him stagger. She saw the 4th bolt coming and knew it would hit his exposed neck. Sarah threw herself between Kale and the shooter. The plasma bolt caught her in the shoulder, and the world went white with pain. Smelled her own burning flesh. Through the haze she heard Kale roaring and the sounds of violence. When the pain receded enough for her to see again, the ambushers were all down, and Kale was kneeling beside her, with his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he applied medical foam to her wound. "You fool," Kale said, and his voice cracked. "You stupid, fragile human fool." "Takes one to know one," Sarah managed through gritted teeth. "Why did you do that?" Kale demanded. "Same reason you would have," Sarah said. "Partnership, remember?" Kale said nothing, but his hands shook as he worked. Sarah spent 3 days in medical recovery while synthetic skin grafted to her shoulder. Kale never left her side. He sat in the corner of her room like a statue, and only moved when medical staff forced him to. On the 3rd day, Sarah was cleared to leave, and found Kale waiting with her gear. "We need to talk," said Agreed, Kale said. They found a quiet corner in the station's observation deck, where ships moved like slow fish through the void. I almost lost you, Kale said without preamble. When that plasma bolt hit you, I felt something break inside me. I'm fine, Sarah said. This time, Kale countered. But humans are so fragile, and you take risks that terrify me. Sarah touched her bandaged shoulder. You took 3 hits protecting that diplomat. My armor held, Kale said. This time. Sarah echoed his words back at him. Kale's eye met hers. I begin to understand why the Takereth works both ways. What do you mean? Sarah asked. When I swore the oath, I promised to protect you, Kale said slowly. But somewhere in these months, I have come to care whether you live or die, beyond simple duty. He gestured at his scarred face. You marked me in battle, but now you have marked me here as well. He touched his chest. In whatever serves as a Draxian heart. Sarah felt something shift in her own chest. I should release you from the oath. Why? Kale asked sharply. Because this isn't fair to you, Sarah said. You're a war prince, and you're wasting your life following a human mercenary around. Wasting? Kale repeated, and his scales flushed dark red with anger. These have been the most meaningful months of my existence. He stood to his full height. Before you I fought because it was expected, and conquered because it was my purpose, and killed because that is what war princes do. His voice softened. But with you I fight for something beyond glory, and I protect someone who matters, and I have found purpose that is mine by choice, rather than birthright. Sarah stood as well, though she barely reached his chest. The Takereth was never supposed to be permanent. Then I choose to make it permanent, Kale said. Release me from the oath if you wish, but I will still follow you because that is my choice. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A ship was approaching fast. Sarah and Kale rushed to the command center, where station security was scrambling. On the view screen, a Draxian warship blazed into view. They're hailing us, the station commander said nervously, asking for Kael'thas by name. Sarah looked at Kale, who had gone very still. My brother, Kale said quietly, War Prince Sharzak. The comm crackled to life, and a voice like grinding stone filled the room. Kael'thas, you dishonor our bloodline with every breath you waste serving that human. Kale's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Return to the Empire and redeem yourself, Sharzak continued. Challenge the human to death combat and restore your honor. No, Kale said simply. The comm went silent for a moment. Then Sharzak laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. I will kill her myself and free you from this shameful oath. The warship began deploying boarding craft. Sarah checked her weapons. How many warriors will he bring? Sharzak commands a kill squad of 20 elite fighters, Kale said. Great, Sarah muttered. Any weaknesses? They are the best the Empire has to offer, Kale said. No weaknesses, only strength and skill and the will to die for honor. Then we'll have to be better, Sarah said. Kale looked at her, and something fierce and bright burned in his golden eye. Together, he said. Together, Sarah agreed. The boarding craft latched onto the station's hull, and the battle began. The battle with Sharzak's kill squad left the station damaged and Sarah wounded again. But they had won. Barely. Kale fought his own brother in the station's cargo bay, and the duel was brutal and fast, and ended with Sharzak retreating with a broken arm and promises of vengeance. Now, 1 year after the arena fight, Sarah and Kale had a reputation that preceded them across known space. The Scar bonded, 2 warriors who fought as one. The Galactic Coalition noticed. They sent an official request through proper channels, asking Sarah and Kale to serve as neutral peacekeepers during critical negotiations on Threshold Prime. This is big, Sarah said while reading the contract details. 3 major powers trying to establish lasting peace. The Human Federation, the Draxian Empire, and the Zen Collective, Kale read over her shoulder. A war between them would consume half the galaxy. No pressure then, Sarah muttered. The payment was substantial enough to make Sarah's eyes widen. More importantly, the Coalition specifically requested them because Sarah was human and Kale was Draxian, and their partnership symbolized the possibility of cooperation. They accepted. Threshold Prime was a massive space station built specifically for diplomatic functions, and it hung in neutral space like a jewel made of metal and glass. Thousands of diplomats and staff and security personnel filled its corridors. Sarah and Kale were assigned to protect the human delegation led by Ambassador Chen Wei, who happened to be Sarah's distant cousin. "Small galaxy," Wei said when they met. "I heard stories about you, but I thought they were exaggerated." "They probably were," Sarah said. Wei looked at Kale with diplomatic interest. "And you're the famous war prince who swore the Takareth?" "I am," Kale confirmed. "The Draxian delegation is not happy about your presence here." Carefully. "They are never happy about my presence anywhere," Kale said. The negotiations began with formal ceremonies and speeches that lasted hours. Sarah found it boring, but stayed alert. Kale stood behind her like a statue and watched everything with his one golden eye. On the third day of talks, Sarah noticed something odd. A junior Draxian diplomat kept glancing at the human section with what looked like hatred. She marked it mentally, but didn't act. That night, an explosion ripped through the human delegation's quarters. Sarah and Kale were in the hallway when it happened, and the blast wave knocked them both down. Ambassador Wei stumbled out of the smoke with blood on his face. "Bomb," he gasped. Security teams swarmed the area and station lockdown protocols activated. Sarah checked Wei for injuries while Kale scanned for additional threats. "This wasn't an accident," Sarah said. "Agreed," Kale said. "The placement was too precise and the timing too convenient." They spent the next hours reviewing security footage. Sarah's combat experience and Kale's knowledge of Draxian behavior patterns made them effective investigators. They found the junior diplomat Sarah had noticed entering a restricted area shortly before the explosion. "His name is Vexkar," Kale said. "Low-ranking clan member with radical political views." "Can we bring him in for questioning?" Sarah asked. "Not without evidence," Kale said. "Diplomatic immunity protects him." "Then we get evidence," Sarah decided. They tracked Vexkar through the station, using security access that Wei provided. The diplomat met with a group of other Draxians in an abandoned docking bay. Sarah and Kale watched from the shadows. "The humans must be eliminated," Vexkar was saying. "Our empire cannot accept peace with such inferior creatures." "This?" another Draxian asked. "Some do," Vexkar said, "and others will once we succeed." "What about the war prince who serves the human?" a third Draxian asked. "Kael'thas will interfere." "My brother Sharzak assures me that Kael'thas will be dealt with," Vexkar said. Sarah and Kale exchanged glances. "This is bigger than one bomb," Sarah whispered. They continued listening as Vexkar laid out a plan that made Sarah's blood run cold. The radicals were going to frame humans for attacking Draxian colonies. They had ships and weapons and false evidence ready. If they succeeded, war between the Federation and Empire would be inevitable. "We need to stop this," Sarah said. "We need proof," Kale corrected. "My word against theirs will not be enough." They spent the next 2 days gathering evidence. Sarah used her human contacts to track weapons shipments. Kale used his knowledge of Draxian military protocols to identify which ships were being moved into position. Ambassador Wei provided diplomatic cover when security asked questions. The conspiracy went deeper than they thought. Multiple Draxian officials were involved. Several human extremists had been recruited. Even some Zhen agents were playing both sides. "This could destabilize everything," Wei said when they briefed him. "We need to take this to the Coalition Council. They will demand proof we do not yet have," Kale said. "Then we get proof," Sarah said. "We infiltrate their operation and record everything." "That is suicide," Kale argued. "You have better ideas?" Sarah challenged. They planned carefully. Kale would use his family connections to approach Vexkar, claiming he wanted to abandon his oath and rejoin the Empire. Sarah would infiltrate the weapons depot where the false flag operation was being staged. Kale said, the night before they executed the plan, "Everything we do is dangerous," Sarah pointed out. "I do not want to lose you," Kale said quietly. Sarah touched his arm just below where his scales gave way to softer skin. "Then we both survive." The plan went wrong immediately. Vexkar didn't believe Kale's story about wanting to return. Sharzak was waiting with another kill squad. Sarah triggered the fire alarm in the weapons depot to create chaos, but someone had anticipated this. She found herself trapped with armed radicals on all sides. Kale fought his way through the kill squad, but Sharzak blocked his path. Finally, Sharzak hissed, "I will kill you and end the shame you brought to our bloodline." "You know nothing of shame," Kale said. "I found honor in service, while you wallow in hatred." They fought. Sharzak was larger and stronger. Kale was faster and more experienced. The battle raged through corridors and left devastation in its wake. Meanwhile, Sarah was running out of options. She had managed to record the conspirators discussing their plan, but now she needed to escape. A plasma bolt caught her in the leg, and she went down hard. Through her comm, she heard Kale roaring her name. "I'm alive," she gasped, "but I'm pinned down in Sector 7. "I am coming," Kale said. "Finish your fight first," Sarah ordered. "I can hold." She couldn't hold. More radicals were closing in. Sarah fired her last magazine and prepared to fight hand-to-hand. Then the wall exploded inward. Kale burst through, wreathed in smoke and fury. Blood covered his scales, and his one eye blazed with protective rage. "No one touches her," he roared. The radicals fled. Kale lifted Sarah with surprising gentleness. "You are injured." "You look worse," Sarah said, and gestured at his multiple wounds. "I have been busy," Kale said. "Sharzak lives, but he will not walk properly for months." "Did you get what we needed?" Sarah asked. Kale held up a data chip. Full confessions from Vexkar and his allies. "I got the weapons depot evidence," Sarah said, and showed her recording. "Then we have them," Kale said. They made their way back to the human delegation. Ambassador Wei took one look at them and called for medical teams. The evidence was presented to the Coalition Council. The conspiracy unraveled rapidly. Vexkar and his co-conspirators were arrested. The false flag operation was stopped. War was averted. But Sarah and Kale were both in critical condition. The plasma wounds Sarah had taken were severe. Kale's injuries from fighting Sharzak and the kill squad were life-threatening even for a Draxian. They were placed in adjacent medical pods. Consciousness. In her lucid moments, she could see Kale's pod nearby. Medical readouts showed his vital signs fluctuating dangerously. She tried to reach out, but her body wouldn't respond. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Kale's voice through the medical bay's intercom. "Stay with me, my scar-giver. I am yours in death as in life." 3 weeks passed in dreamless medical sleep. Sarah woke to soft lights and the quiet hum of life support systems. Her leg throbbed with phantom pain where synthetic muscle had been grafted. She turned her head slowly and saw the medical pod next to hers. Kale lay inside with monitoring equipment tracking his recovery. New scars crossed his chest and arms, where plasma fire and combat blades had found their marks. But he was breathing. Sarah tried to speak, but her throat was dry. A medical attendant noticed she was awake and brought water. "How long?" Sarah managed to ask. 23 days, the attendant said. "You both almost died multiple times." "Kale?" Sarah asked. "Stable now," the attendant assured her. "Draxian biology is remarkable, and he fought hard to stay alive." Over the next few days, Sarah regained her strength. Kale woke on the 5th day, and his first word was her name. "I am." "Here," Sarah said from her bed. Kale turned his head, and his golden eye found her. You lived? We both did, Sarah said. The conspiracy? Kale asked. Crushed, Sarah said. Vexkar and his allies are in custody, and the peace treaty was signed yesterday. Kale's scales rippled with satisfaction. Ambassador Wei visited once they were both conscious. The coalition wants to give you both medals, he said. You saved billions of lives. We were just doing our job, Sarah said. You did considerably more than that, Wei argued. The Scar-bonded are heroes now. Sarah made a face. After Wei left, Kale spoke quietly. My father sent a message. The Emperor? Sarah asked. He offers full pardon and restoration of all my titles and properties, Kale said. He also offers to release me from the Takareth if I wish. Sarah's chest tightened. What did you tell him? I have not responded yet, Kale said. Wanted to speak with you first. You should go back, Sarah said, even though the words hurt. You're a war prince, and you deserve to reclaim your birthright. Do you want me to leave? Kale asked. Sarah couldn't lie. No. Then why do you suggest it? Kale pressed. Because staying with me means giving up everything you were born to be, Sarah said. I can't ask you to do that. Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Let me tell you a story from Draxian history. Sarah listened. 300 years ago, before the last Tahareth was invoked, my people believed that strength came from conquest and power came from domination, Kale began. The warrior who invoked the oath was named Kreshvar, and she bound herself to an alien trader from a species we had considered weak, Kale continued. Together they explored the galaxy and fought battles that became legends, and when Kreshvar finally died at the age of 200, she was buried with honors greater than any emperor. What is your point? Sarah asked. My point is that she chose her own path, Kale said. She gave up titles and wealth and the approval of her people because she found something more valuable. As I met hers, she found purpose. And you think you found that with me? Sarah asked. I know I have, Kale said firmly. Before you I was a weapon pointed at targets chosen by others, and now I am a warrior who chooses his own battles. He struggled to sit up, despite the medical equipment. You never owned me, Sarah. We own each other, and we belong to something greater than either of us alone. Sarah felt tears threatening. The Takareth was supposed to be temporary. Then let it become permanent, Kale said. Not as duty, but as choice. What about your family? Sarah asked. I will send my father a response, Kale said. I will thank him for the offer and decline with finality. They will hate you, Sarah said. Some will, Kale agreed. But my father respects the old ways, and he will understand, and that is enough. The coalition offered them both positions. They could join the peacekeepers with full military rank and excellent pay. Sarah and Kale discussed it seriously. What do you want? Sarah asked. I want to continue working with you, Kale said. Whether that is with the peacekeepers or as independent contractors does not matter. The peacekeepers would mean rules and bureaucracy and politics, Sarah said. And independent work means freedom but less stability, Kale countered. They chose freedom. Sarah sent a polite refusal to the coalition. Instead, they started planning their own operation. 2 months after waking from medical sleep, Sarah and Kale were cleared for active duty. Sarah's leg was fully healed, though she walked with a slight limp when it rained. Kale's new scars had sealed, and his chest bore marks that would never fade. They stood together in a small office on Threshold Prime and looked at the contracts being offered. This one is interesting, Sarah said, training new security forces on a frontier colony. This one pays better, Kale said. Escort duty for a science expedition into uncharted space. We could take both, Sarah suggested. Training first, then the expedition. Building a reputation, Kale said. Building a business, Sarah corrected. They filed the paperwork to establish themselves officially. Chen Kale Security Solutions. The name made Kale's scales ripple with amusement. News spread quickly. Other mercenaries were skeptical. Draxian military commanders were outraged. Human military analysts were intrigued. The Gen Collective sent a formal inquiry about hiring them. Within 6 months, they had more contracts than they could handle. Sarah hired additional staff. Human veterans who understood her tactics, and alien warriors who respected the Takareth. Kale trained them all personally. The company grew. They rented a small station in neutral space and converted it into headquarters and training facility. Young Draxian warriors began appearing, asking to learn from Kale. At first, Kale refused them. Then one young warrior explained, "The High Clans say you are shamed, but I see a warrior who found honor in partnership, and that is what I seek." Kale looked at Sarah. Sarah shrugged. "Your call." Kale accepted the young warrior. More came. Human soldiers sought training in Draxian combat meditation. Draxian warriors sought training in human tactical flexibility. The Takareth, which had been seen as ancient shame, became something new, a symbol of partnership across species. 5 years after the arena fight, Sarah stood in the training center watching recruits. Kale approached with his usual quiet presence. His scar had been painted with ceremonial gold paint for a formal ceremony. Among Draxians, the mark of Takareth was now honored. "Thinking about the past?" Kale asked. "Thinking about how far we have come," Sarah said. A group of new recruits approached nervously. They were mixed species, 2 humans, 1 Draxian, 1 Zen. "Captain Chen?" the lead human asked. "War Prince Kale?" "We wanted to ask about the stories." "Stories?" Sarah said. "About the arena fight," the Draxian said. "About how you defeated War Prince Kale and invoked the Takareth." "Is it true?" the Zen clicked. "Did you really scar him with a broken pillar?" Sarah looked at Kale. Kale's eye held amusement. "Every scar tells a story," Sarah said. "Mine tells of the day I met my partner. And mine tells of the day I found my purpose," Kale added. "Can you teach us to fight together like you do?" the human recruit asked. "That is why you are here," Kale said. "To learn that strength comes not from individual power, but from trust and partnership. To learn that different species bring different strengths," Sarah continued. "And together, we are greater than the sum of our parts." The recruits listened with eager attention. Sarah dismissed them to their training. When they were alone again, Kale spoke. "What happened in the arena?" "Which part?" Sarah asked. "Winning the fight, or gaining you?" "Both," Kale said. Sarah touched the golden scar on his face. "I regret the pain I caused you that day." "And I am grateful for it," Kale said. "This mark is my pride." "I used to think the Takareth meant I owned you," Sarah said. "And now?" Kale asked. "Now I know we own each other," Sarah said. "You are mine, and I am yours. And together we are something neither of us could be alone." "The bond eternal," Kale said. "The bond eternal," Sarah agreed. They stood together, looking out at the training floor, where humans and Draxians and Zen and others worked side by side. "She scarred him in battle," Kale said thoughtfully. "That is how others tell the story." "And now he belongs to her for life," Sarah finished. "Inaccurate," Kale said. "Very," Sarah agreed. "The true story is better," Kale said. "The true story?" Sarah asked. Kale's golden eye met hers. 2 warriors met in combat and discovered that belonging is not about ownership, but about choice. "And they chose each other," Sarah said. "Every day," Kale confirmed. A new contract alert appeared on Sarah's datapad. She read it and smiled. "Interesting job just came in." "Tell me," Kale said. "Diplomatic protection during first contact negotiations with a newly discovered species," Sarah said. "Challenging," Kale observed. "Exactly our specialty," Sarah said. They walked together toward the command center. 2 warriors, Two species, one bond. The scar on Kale's face caught the light and gleamed gold. The slight limp in Sarah's walk was barely noticeable. Behind them, recruits trained and learned and grew. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited with endless challenges. But whatever came next, they would face it, together. Because some bonds are forged in blood, and some bonds last forever. And the strongest bonds are the ones we choose.